My name's Dave DeBoe, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back. Dave DeBoe today. And let me ask you a question. Have you ever stayed in a boutique hotel? Have you ever thought, hey, this would be kind of a cool asset class to be involved in? Well, if you have, like I have, then you're in for a real treat today because our special guest is Mark Gonneau. And Mark is doing exactly that, amongst other things. He's a 25-year real estate professional, entrepreneur, investor. He's been doing this for a long time. He's done multifamily apartment buildings. He's done boutique hotels. He's got his own REIT. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation. Mark, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's just jump right in because I can't wait to unwrap this. So tell me what your definition of a boutique hotel is. What is a boutique hotel?
My definition, which of course I'm sure there's others who will have different definitions, but my definition is it is not a flagged hotel, meaning it's not something that's under a chain, whether that's a Fairmont or a Marriott or a Hilton, those type of chains.
Mm-hmm.
And typically they tend to be smaller. I mean, I sort of look at a boutique hotel as being 30 to 50 rooms or 30 to 50 units, but the definition isn't based on size. It's more based on the fact that it's an independent hotel.
All right. Very cool. So how did this asset class kind of grab your attention in the first place? Walk us through that initial foray into boutique hotels.
Yeah, so I have to credit my business partner Dave with sort of finding this asset class for us to go into. It started, we were doing a lot of multifamily investing, and we're doing multifamily value add, much like I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of or done themselves.
Mhm.
And the numbers were making less and less sense with the multifamily value add. Cap rates were being compressed. We were looking at interest rates. This is sort of pre-COVID. We were looking at the prospect of interest rates going up, and it was becoming more and more speculative, the multifamily value add model, where in order to be a successful project, you really had to turn over a lot of units in that building. And from a financial standpoint, there's risk with that in terms of what happens if you can't turn over all the units,
Yeah.
especially out here in Ontario where the landlord tenant legislation is so strong.
Mhm.
And then there's also the sort of the social side of things of, okay, you're going in and you're trying to cash for keys, which is perfectly legal, but is it really a level playing field when you as an investor with all the knowledge that you have come into somebody's house or somebody's apartment, I should say, that while you're offering them X number of dollars to move out, do they really comprehend that how much that's going to affect their life and how far that few $1,000s is going to go when they
Right.
still have a lifetime of renting potentially to sort of make up for. So,
Or maybe the other hand where they're a very educated tenant and they understand how much that's worth and they
oh
kind of
yeah,
rake you, take you over the
we
rack and it's not a
I've
couple of
we
thousand, it's 100,000.
100%. We have had some very financially savvy tenants when it came to a cash for keys negotiation that yes, were quite knowledgeable of their rights and quite knowledgeable of the value of the piece of paper that they were holding, which was the lease.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I said, I mean, we were looking at multifamily and well, I mean, I still love multifamily to this day, and I still do multifamily to this day. We started looking at alternatives. And at first, we were looking at alternatives from a location standpoint. And that's what led Dave to go out to Montreal to investigate the multifamily market in Montreal.
Okay.
And so we went out there looking for multifamily properties in Montreal, get a feel for the market. And what he came back with, as he tells the story, is when he was coming back on the flight, he was thinking to himself, the best thing about his trip out to Montreal wasn't the buildings that he saw, it was the hotel that he stayed in. And he kept on thinking to himself, like, how could I stay in such a wonderful location, recently renovated, all these amenities that it had with it for such a reasonable price?
Hmm.
And it occurred to him that the hotel had been set up so that there was no front desk, there was no concierge. Everything was run through your phone, through just like an Airbnb type of setup. And that was the most appealing thing to him from that trip.
That's the light bulb went off.
Yeah, the light
What
bulb
year
went
was
off.
that,
So
Mark? What
so
year?
that would have been 2018, I want to say.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
2018, 2019.
Got it.
So then we started looking into the boutique hotel space. And initially it was very difficult to find good properties.
Hmm.
Um, then a little thing called COVID happened.
Lots of good properties became available.
And you had hotels that were being shut down, of course, that like, I mean, tourism just came to a dead stop. And all these properties where you had owners that had unrealistic expectations of their sales price, were all of a sudden far more reasonable. And we had people then started calling us and saying, hey, are you still interested in buying hotels? And so we
Mhm.
looked at it and looked into it and said, hey, yeah. And so we were able to pick up, get some really good deals at the time.
Nice, nice. So, okay, so walk me through what the big advantages are. Let's compare and contrast boutique hotels with apartment buildings, pros and cons of each in your experience now that you've been doing this for a number of years. And you touched on a few
Yeah.
already, like it was the apartment buildings were just getting priced out and the landlord tenancy rules and regulations are a pain, all that kind of stuff. So what are the big advantages to a boutique hotel?
Yeah. So the biggest advantage to a hotel, in my opinion, is the lack of landlord tenant board.
Hmm.
First and foremost, being somebody who is living in Ontario, who has investments in Ontario. Now, I mean, I also have investments in Alberta and BC. So landlord tenant regulations are different in Alberta. They're also different in BC. But in Ontario, the landlord tenant board is so broken.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wish some of the politicians that make the rules would actually speak to the investors with boots on the ground like us and realize that the reason why so many people were trying to go to Airbnb investing was not just the cash flow. It was to avoid the landlord tenant board and avoid all the issues that come with landlord tenant board.
Yeah, exactly.
So that really is the biggest thing for me as far as the advantage. Yes, there is far higher cash flow with the boutique hotels than there are with multifamily, but you have to keep in mind it's higher cash flow because it's more work.
Yeah. It's
Um,
very active. Even though
yeah,
you've got a lot of systems and automations in place, somebody's still got to clean those rooms and,
yes, of
plunge those
course.
toilets and all that kind of stuff, right? So,
Well, hopefully not too often. But yeah, I mean, somebody who, like, if you think about somebody who's had a condo, whether it was Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, whatever, and they were renting it long term, and then they decided to rent it short term. Yes, they were able to make more money renting it short term than they were long term, but that's because they have an active business on top of a passive real estate investment.
yeah.
Whereas a long term rental is far more of a, I mean, it's not 100% passive, it's not entirely passive, but it's on sort of the spectrum of active and passive, it's far more passive than running an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And this
And
like
I mean, and the one of the big things I've heard about with Airbnb type situations, same thing with your boutique hotel is, ratings. Ratings and
Mhm.
reviews are so, so,
Yeah.
so important. So the customer service side of things is at a different stratosphere compared to a normal long-term tenancy.
Oh, of course. Of course. So when we're doing boutique hotels, it's like an Airbnb on steroids.
Yeah.
It's not one condo as an Airbnb, it's 23, 27 condos in one building as an Airbnb. Um, but that's the advantage. We have scale when we do that.
Right.
And so getting back to advantages. So yes, first and foremost, I'm outside of the landlord tenant board. Second, the cash flow is significantly greater with the boutique hotel than it would be as a multifamily building. Third, When I do these projects, the speed or the velocity of money is significantly faster with boutique hotels than it is with a multifamily.
Okay.
So, to explain what I mean there, when I would buy a multifamily property and I'm looking at doing a value add play on it, which is where as people move out, you renovate the units and you
Mm.
bring in somebody that's paying a higher rent, and higher rent means higher income, which means the property's valued more. I would budget for a minimum of 3, but typically 5 years to be able to do a cycle, to be able to turn over enough tenants and get my refinancing at the other end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because again, with landlord tenant legislation, it takes time for people to move out, especially if you're not in a particularly landlord friendly environment.
Yeah.
Um, so it takes like you're on a 5 year cycle to turn that building over to go from start to finish. As I joke with a hotel, I can have everybody out by Friday. I mean, my reviews will suffer, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
but legally, there's nothing preventing me, even if you have a reservation, from saying, "Hi, I'm sorry, we've decided to close down the hotel. Here's your money back." Legally, there's nothing that prevents me from doing that.
Right.
So what that means is I can turn over a building so much faster from start to finish. I can buy it, I can renovate it, I can bring it back up to that higher level, and then you can do the refinance at the back end. So the velocity of money is that much quicker with
So
the boutique
if it's a
hotels.
5 year average with an apartment building, what would you say it is with your experience with these boutique hotels? Like how much do you condense that time frame realistically?
2 to 3.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty
That's
much cutting
awesome.
it in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. So, just out of curiosity, paint the mental picture for me, if you will, Mark, about what you guys are looking for in a new boutique hotel project. Everyone's different, I understand, but what's
Mhm.
the typical process that you guys go through for finding them, figuring out if it's a good deal, what kind of renovations do you do, what's the exit strategy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in a way, very similar to a multifamily property. I mean, real estate is real estate. So the first thing that I'm looking for is location. So the locations that we have are like downtown Montreal, downtown Quebec City. These are prime locations that are going to be sought after locations today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. And it doesn't matter whether it's a hotel or an apartment building or anything like that, or anything else really. A great location is always going to be a great location, is always going to be desirable. So that's
Yeah.
first and foremost. Um, then I look for something that's structurally sound, that has good bones and mechanically sound. I look for things that are cosmetically dated, and I look for things that aren't managed effectively as they could be. So to me, the one that has the mon pa owner operator, a lot of times it's a baby boomer age owner operator that's looking for an exit strategy.
Yeah.
Their kids want absolutely nothing to do with it because
Surprise,
they've
surprise.
seen, well, I mean, they've seen like the only way mom and dad knew how to operate it was to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So they've seen mom and dad never take a vacation. They've seen mom and dad be the ones doing the renovations and doing the cleaning, doing the repairs.
Yeah. They've been running the place since 1983 kind of thing, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's our ideal purchase. And then we go in there as an exit option for them when they don't really have that many exit options.
Okay.
So we go in, we buy it. When we do the renovations, there's sort of two types of renovations that we're looking at doing. So the first type, of course, is cosmetic. So just like anything else, if you take something that looks like built in 1970, 1980, or last renovated in 1970, 1980, and you bring that up to today's aesthetics, you're going to be able to charge more. So there's cosmetic renovations that we do, of course, both interior and exterior. But more importantly to me is the functional renovations. So what I mean by that is the first thing that we do is we take away the front desk staff, and we add automations and we add technology, both hardware and software, to allow it so that the guests can do everything through their phone.
Hmm.
So when we eliminate that front desk staff, it does a few things. So first of all, it saves us a bunch of money. If you think about, even if you're just paying minimum wage, and you've got somebody there 16 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Hmm.
you're $130,000 worth of labor cost just to have someone sitting at the front desk. So we can remove that with technology and with automations, but we still have to maintain a really high guest satisfaction. We have to maintain really high guest service.
Right.
But by having a centralized command when it comes to guest communication, we can scale and have multiple locations all run through one centralized command. So for you as a guest, you can still 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, reach out and get somebody instantly through phone, through text, through email. And there's always going to be somebody on site from like a cleaning maintenance type standpoint, or on call, I should say, so
Hmm.
that if there is any issues, that they can respond to that right away. But if you think about it, most people don't want to have to go down to the front desk staff
Hmm.
to get to deal with an issue. They want to pick up their phone, describe the issue, have it dealt with, and be done with it. So
Very
even when
cool.
checking in, you don't want to, you've just come on off a long flight or a long drive. You don't want to stand in line to get your keys.
Fair enough.
Here
Yeah.
you go through your phone. It gives you a code to get in the front door. It gives you directions on how to get to your room. It gives you a code to get into your room, and then you're there. You've got everything you need.
Now, are you kind of, is this a different platform than Airbnb, or are you running everything pretty much through Airbnb or Verbo or something like that?
Actually, we don't just go through Airbnb.
Mhm.
We run, so we have a hotel partner, a hotelier, because I'm a real estate person, not a hotelier.
Mhm.
So we actually have a partner, and he does the actual operations side of things for us.
Cool.
So when it comes to booking channels, we're on the Expedias, the Booking.com, all the typical booking channels, plus the Airbnb and VRBO.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, for the communications and that sort of thing. And I noticed when I was looking at your website that you have several hotels in the same city. Does
Mhm.
that mean you've got the central command kind of location specific, and you've got the maintenance people within 5 minutes of all the spots, kind of thing?
Oh, of course. So when it comes to us choosing locations, there is economies of scale that you get. So having multiple locations within the same city, there are economies of scale there.
Very cool.
Um,
Very,
yeah.
very
And then
interesting.
I was going to jump in with the other sort of big functional renovation that we
Yeah.
do is adding kitchens to the units.
Interesting.
And so we do that for a few reasons. So one, people on average will pay more for a hotel room with a kitchen than one without.
Even if they're like me
Two,
and they never use it.
yeah, to be honest, a lot of people don't, but it's a comfort factor.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, it opens up an extended stay crowd. So, an extended stay is somebody, I use my brother-in-law as an example. He is a database architect, and I have no idea what that means. But I know that he works all day, every day on his computer, and he works from home all the time. But he spends 2 months a year. He's a really avid snowboarder, and 2 months a year he goes out to Whistler and snowboards for a month.
Hmm.
He goes once in the spring and once in the fall. So he's working from home the whole time, but he's staying at an Airbnb or a place, like he needs a place that has a kitchen. He needs a place that has laundry, because to stay for a night or two at a place that doesn't have a kitchen, where you're dependent upon room service and going out to restaurants, is one thing. But to stay a week, to stay a month, no, you want to have that kitchen. You want to have access to laundry facilities. So we put those in, and that allows us to attract that extended stay traveler. Extended stay travelers are fantastic for filling up the off season.
Hmm.
They stay longer, which means there's less cleaning, less maintenance that we have to do, so it reduces our costs. But the biggest thing that I like about it is when I have some units that have kitchens in them, I now have something that looks and feels like an apartment building, but has the license for a hotel.
Yeah.
So I now have the
It
best
doesn't
of
have
both
the
worlds.
encumbrances of the landlord tenancy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can rent by the night, but there's nothing that prevents me from renting by the day, the week, the month, or longer. So I
Very
can
nice.
operate it like an apartment building, or I can operate it like a hotel. Our
And you
locations in
don't have all the
Montreal.
limitations that the Airbnb guys are running into
Well, I
because
have
it
the
is,
license.
yeah,
Yeah. So all the Airbnb licensing, all the Airbnb bans, I hate to say it to some listeners, is music to my ears, because
of
that's driving
course.
people in my
You,
front door.
you own a hotel, you got a hotel
I
that's an
have,
Airbnb
because,
at the
but
same.
that is something that we look for. Like,
Yeah.
we are buying hotel licenses when we buy, because we know that the Airbnb licensing is only going to get more and more strict.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we by putting in kitchens, I have flexibility of operations. I even have flexible exit strategies. So, flexibility of operations, for instance, like we have 3 hotels in downtown Montreal. They're 10 minutes away from McGill, 5 minutes away from UQAM. So, there's a large student population that we could tap into if we wanted to. So, I could rent these as student rentals from September to May during the off season and take advantage of the stability of a long-term lease, and then I could rent them as daily rentals as a hotel from May to September during the high season. So I
Yes.
have options, I have flexibility. When it comes time to sell a property, is it going to be worth more as a hotel, or is it going to be worth more as a student rental? Is it going to be worth more as a multifamily? I can then change the hotel. I can change the property to fit the highest and best use. So when we buy a property, we get appraisals, of course, just like anybody else, but we get appraisals for the property as a hotel when our renovations are complete. We also get appraisals for the same property as a multifamily when our renovations are complete. So we do both as is and as complete, as a hotel and as a multifamily. So that way,
Yeah. What's the, just out of curiosity, what's the price difference between the two, give or take?
um, it depends on the property, to be
Really?
perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So in some cases, yes, the hotel is worth more. And I'm going to say probably in the majority of the cases, the hotel is worth more. But there are some cases where it's very reasonable, like, sorry, very close. And this is where we have chosen sometimes to actually convert to multifamily from that hotel, because this is where we get into the disadvantage of hotels is financing.
Mm.
The advantage of multifamily, of course, you have CMHC, you have banks that love long-term multifamily rentals. Banks aren't quite as friendly towards
Uh,
hotels when it comes to mortgages and financing. So we when we get our mortgages, our leverage is less. We're doing 65% loan to value on hotels, whereas CMHC nowadays you can get up to 95% loan to value.
oh,
Our
yeah.
amortizations are typically 20 to 25 years, whereas CMHC you're 35, 45, and possibly even 50 years, depending on the program that you qualify under. So the we look at everything when we look at the property, because at the end of the day, what we're most concerned with is what's going to generate the best returns for our investors. And sometimes operating it as a hotel generates the best returns for our investors. Other times operating it as a multifamily generates the best returns for our investors. But
Yeah.
what I
Well,
really
I love
like,
the fact that you've got the flexibility. Now, Mark,
well,
as we're wrapping up here,
sure.
speaking of
As you can tell,
open,
I can talk all day about this.
well, we get to have you back. That's great.
Yeah.
Speaking of investors, what do you guys, because I was looking over the information you sent ahead of time, and you've recently, or I think it's recently, started your own REIT to start
Yep.
help with raising capital for doing projects. What does that look like for you these days for raising capital for your deals?
So yeah, we initially we were raising capital, sort of friends and family, just like anybody else.
Yeah,
But then just last year, we put in place all the legal paperwork to start up a private REIT. So we now have the private REIT that allows us to take both cash and RSP funds from I want to say just about everybody. It's accredited investors, of course, but it's also eligible investors, which is a much lower bar to really be able to cross from a qualification standpoint.
very cool. And what's been your learning experience going through that whole process of setting something like that up? I would I would imagine the time and expense and the paperwork is substantial.
Yes. When you think it's going to be expensive and it's more expensive. You think it's going to take time, it's going to take more time. Yeah, it obviously there's learning that goes through with anything. If I were to do it again, I'd do it slightly differently so that it would take less time and be less expensive. Um, but let's just say I'm sure the lawyers are happy.
Yeah, they usually are that kind of the situation. Oh, that is fantastic. Well, hey, Mark, thank you very, very much for shedding a little bit of light into the whole boutique hotel business. I find it fascinating, and congratulations on your success. I think that's brilliant. And the flexibility that you've got with that, the adding the kitchens, absolutely brilliant there. You can pivot, you can change, you can switch. the locations, the efficiencies, just automating the heck out of everything. Sounds very, very appealing, but it's not all sunshine and flowers. You've got the challenges of the banks not liking them quite as much as what they're more familiar with, which are apartment buildings and whatnot, and CMHC and all that kind of good stuff. But again, you've got different exit strategies, so that's fantastic. If people want to find out more and connect with you, what should they do?
Probably the easiest is email mark@honeytreegrow.ca. The website is just that, honeytreegrow.ca, and I'm usually pretty responsive.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you very much for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.